Hello and welcome back to Main Game, the show where we put the pedal to the metal and rev up the excitement as we talk about video games and esports. Of course, here with me is none other than my co-host, Kakuchopurei's very own Louise Lacombe. So Louise, are you ready, to shift into gear?
Indeed I am, and speaking of gears, we've got a very special episode for you today, as this episode is going to revolve around racing games. We will touch upon the history of racing games and also talk about an upcoming title later this year.
All right, but first, let's head on to our first segment of the day, which is Lowdown. All right, before we get started, I'd like to talk about cars, okay? So Louise, do you like cars or maybe specifically big cars?
Well, growing up, I did love my supercars, specifically the Lamborghini Murcielago, which was my dream car for the longest time.
Okay, speaking of dreams, do you have ever had any dreams of driving a supercar?
Of course. I mean, I come from a household that loves Formula One, so I spent a lot of my childhood watching F1 with my father, and in fact, he used to race go-karts competitively as a kid. But for me, that was but a dream. All
right. Well, what if I told you that you can make the most nights flights of fancy a reality? So our first segment is a spotlight on a Malaysian-made company that makes you live out your motorsports dream. So here's our first segment, which is the eRacing as a career.
Racing games, when you just want to sit back and drive a car super fast but can't do it in real life. But what if all your skills in these video games can translate to real-life driving? Believe it or not, there are a few instances where a driving game is so realistic and accurate, you can take what you learned there and used it while driving an F1 car or a Super GT Series vehicle, and from there, become a professional racer. Wouldn't it be great if there was a school that can turn racing gamers and enthusiasts into professional racers? Enter Axel Sports. Founded in 2008, Axel Sports provide progressive avenues to the motorsports industry, one of them being sim racing. Via the Axel Academy program and eRacing GP circuit, beginners and professionals can undergo world-class coaching and also take part in competitions to eventually become real-life motorsport champions. Axel Sports founder Alex Young, Malaysia's sole Formula One racing driver and three-time Audi R8 LMS Cup champion, has over 30 years of experience to share and impart to anyone willing to learn.
We got into esports side of stuff in 2018. We still have our real-life racing. We build race cars and stuff. We race them. We reached a tipping point. The racing scene on esports, or the simulator racing that they call it, was getting bigger, especially regionally. And we run eRacing GP as well, which is all the championships we run within the region and stuff. And the main reason for doing that is, sports is, in many aspects, most sports really are struggling a bit at the moment. This new era of social media and mobile phones means we're losing a lot of the population to YouTube. So in motorsports, it's very important to try and make it more accessible. The other big problem about motorsports is it's so expensive. But now we have esports, we've got these competitions and you've got the simulators and stuff, or you can even use your phone. It makes it much more accessible to people. I mean, I think in Malaysia there's a stigma in racing in general. There's too much illegal racing going on out there, and that's why it's better to do it on the simulators, or do it at the racetrack.
Game titles like the Assetto Corsa series and Gran Turismo titles from Sony do help keep the foundation of eRacing still alive thanks to their simulation aspect and adherence to real-life motorsports.
Well, the interesting thing about eRacing is that the skills you learn to drive a car can get transferred across all the different titles. If you really understand how to drive a car, you can be quick on GT Sport, you can be quick on Assetto Corsa, Vroom, R Factor 2, iRacing, with some small little adjustments in how you drive. You can be quick across all these titles. But that's no different from going out and driving a real car. If you want to drive a Formula 1 car to a DTM car to an A1 car, you always have to change your driving style a little bit. And that's what's really good about proper racing games, you know. That so some racing games, okay, they're a bit arcadey. They don't drive like a real car. Obviously, it doesn't transfer. But there are a lot of good titles out there that if you learn how to drive properly, learn how to set up the car properly, it gets transferred into real life. And we've seen that. We've got loads of drivers coming to real life now and doing a fantastic job who started out as pure sim drivers.
Does Axel Esports and Axel Academy bear fruit? Why, yes it does. Here's a testimony from up-and-coming racer from Axel Academy, Nakib Aslan.
My dream was to become a racing driver. And the main purpose of me doing mechanical engineering was so that I could stay within that automotive section. Well, the life plan was maybe do mechanical engineering, get into a racing team, become an engineer, somehow get the opportunity to drive a car and prove my worth and become a racing driver after that. Obviously, the route sort of changed thanks to sim racing and e-racing and esports in general, which has leapfrogged me into that stage of being able to become a racing driver. I think my proudest moment so far is firstly making the transition into real life racing. I have to say winning that Sepang 1000 kilometer in 2022 with Toyota Gazoo Racing. I think it's been a dream of mine to become a driver for a manufacturer. And to race with them and to win with them alongside Tengku Jan, which is pretty much one of the most well-known racers here in Malaysia. It was very special and I look forward to doing more, especially. I think my dream goal is to win the 24-hour Le Mans with Toyota. It's definitely not going to be an easy one, not a straightforward goal, but not impossible.
Now, that's quite a deep dive into e-racing. So, Luis, what do you think about Excel Sports or e-racing in general?
I think e-racing makes complete sense as a concept, especially given the history behind arcade cabinets simulating what it's like to be in the driver's seat, which we will touch upon later in the next segment. Nowadays, people will purchase gaming steering wheels with motors to simulate that same experience from the comfort of their own home. And it doesn't surprise me that some of these people would start taking this subgenre of gaming a bit more seriously and, well, start competing competitively.
All right, say I want to sign up for Excel Academy and learn how to drive a supercar eventually. So how do I go about doing that?
Well, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is head on over to the Axel Sports website, head over to the Axel Academy tab, where they have corporate packages, classroom training, and track day packages set in Sepang. All the contact details are there on the site, and so if you're interested, Aoife, then maybe you should go check it out.
All right, okay. That sounds great. I am actually interested, but I do think that we need to take a pit stop break for now. We'll be right back after these commercials. Alright, racing games look incredibly gorgeous and realistic right now, but it wasn't always like this. The gaming stone ages of the 70s and 80s mean we had to really imagine what fancy cars look like. But it is fascinating to see how it all evolved. Here's a quick history lesson on the wonderful world of racing games.
When it comes to driving digital, not real cars, how do we go from this to this? Yes, we've always associated racing games as pseudo 3D first-person experiences, be it the very serious classy simulation kind, to the fun car racing variant with power-ups and weapons. But how did we reach this latest checkpoint? To find out, we'll have to go back to the 70s. Nolan Bushnell, the father of Atari and mass-market video games, created Grand Track 10 in 1974. This conglomeration of bloops and bloops is the first example of a racing video game. Yes, there were earlier examples of electronic racing games, but for the type of title that's on a screen and on a machine that runs games, Grand Track 10 was the pioneer. Top-down racing goodness comes with its own controls. This was truly the idyllic racing game life for many folks, but what they don't know is that the future is looking very bright. We now cross the third dimension, or rather the third-person perspective and first-person perspective that slowly but surely made top-down and 2D style racing games obsolete. We have 1982's Pole Position to thank for that. Pole Position was the most popular 80s game at the time to revolutionize the third-person driving view, featuring breathtaking visuals and fast-paced racing. Sega's arcade machine Double Trouble offering then took money from people. Legally, of course, as that's how arcade games work. You put money into the machine, you play for a few rounds, all that jazz. Hang On and Outrun just built on what Pole Position started and gave players more immersive ways to play via a motion control arcade cabinet and well-built steering wheels. Arcade racing games then transitioned to 3D polygon graphics, which looked all the better for it in retrospect. Namco's winning run started that trend, followed by titles like Ridge Racer and Daytona USA, each with their own cabinet setup and fans in the 90s. Later on in the 2000s, the arcade racing spirit was kept alive with the likes of Initial D, Test Drive, Need for Speed, and Midnight Club. In between those decades, vehicular combat genres also made a short appearance. These include the Destruction Derby games, the Carmageddon series, and Sony's Twisted Metal franchise. Last we heard, there's a TV show that's happening this year. The building blocks for a subgenre of racing games are being laid out, a subgenre in racing games known as the driving simulator. Sim racing games basically have tougher settings, controls, and tracks. However, they give players a huge sense of progression for beating their standout marathon tracks. The first game to do this, Checkered Flag for the ZX Spectrum console, was the first computer car simulator game out there. Hard Drivin' was the first console-driven simulation game to incorporate 3D graphics, which became a huge staple for many future racing titles, simulations, arcade titles, or otherwise. The culmination of sim racing games came to its apex with the Gran Turismo series from game developer Kazunori Yamauchi. It was by that point in 1997 and onward that the PlayStation exclusive driving simulation became a mainstream success, getting more and more people on board with the genre. While it had many contenders, the Gran Turismo series still remained in pole position. Last but not least, we should not forget about kart racing games. The racing games that cater to the far end of the difficulty in games spectrum. In 1992, Nintendo's Fat Plumber Mario took a break from defeating turtles and instead raced against his friends and enemies in go-karts all across the Mushroom Kingdom racetracks. Mario Kart pioneered the kart racing genre, influencing many clones throughout the years while also improving itself with many sequels and iterations. The most current Mario Kart game right now is the main reason people are still buying Nintendo Switches. In any case, the racing genre of games is still here to stay. While it's not as insanely popular as other competitive games right now, there is always a demand to drive really fast in a digital environment. Be it in a real-life car of your dreams, or a super fast go-kart that can stick onto roads while on an upside-down roller coaster track. Keep living life in the fast lane, racing game fans, because that ride isn't stopping anytime soon.
Now, that was quite an extensive history lesson on racing games. I have to say, I do prefer Mario Kart. It's way more colorful and more accessible. In fact, I did prefer arcade races a decade ago, especially the ones with more elaborate driving cabinets. So, Luis, do you have a favorite?
Yes, I do actually. Being someone who grew up in the PlayStation 2 era, I'd say that I played a lot of Need for Speed. Need for Speed Underground 2 to be specific. I remember playing it for the first time and just enjoying the customization the game had to offer and just getting a glimpse into that Tokyo Drift lifestyle.
Okay, say I want to, start getting serious with a racing game. Which game should I jump into?
I would suggest Forza Horizon 5 for the Xbox or PC. The game features quite a lot of cars that you can unlock with some really awesome set courses spread across the open region of Mexico and many accessibility options. There's the replay and rewind feature that allows you to go back a few seconds if you messed up on a course, and a whole lot of settings that just allow you to play the game either as an arcade racer or as a pure driving simulator.
All right, so drive sim control sounds very, very tempting. And I do believe we're due for one last pit stop before our final segment. So don't go anywhere, fellow viewers. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back, fellow viewers and racing game fans. We've seen the eRacing circuit. We have also delved into the history of racing games from its humble beginnings to its present-day offerings. So, Luis, what do you think about the future, though?
I think that, well, racing games are going to be sticking around for quite a while. They're not going away anytime soon because I feel like there's always going to be a demand to drive virtual cars or motorbikes. But I think we should look towards e-racing. Like in the interview with Alex Young, he mentions that, e-racing is used as somewhat of a simulation training that, racers can use to better themselves as professional race car drivers in real life. So I think that's really the future for racing games as graphics and physics get more and more realistic.
All right, so we have new racing game like the Horizon MotoGP 23 and the Forza Motorsports reboot. But Luis, how about a game that bridges the gap between casuals and hardcore players?
As I mentioned in my earliest answer, I would probably have to say Need for Speed because it's just the perfect balance of just casual and competitive. If you want, if you've had a long day's work, you come back home, you just want to casually play a racing game, then Need for Speed's that is it. But if you also want to take it a little bit more seriously, you can as well. You can purchase yourself a gaming steering wheel and just, play it a little bit more intensely.
All right, okay, so here's a look at a new racing game in the market that can possibly do just that. So take it away, John.
The racing game scene has its fair share of casual titles to the more immersive driving simulation. But what about a title that attempts to bridge that gap, or at least cater to various skill levels, uniting players together over common ground? A few years back, we had Forza Horizon 5 for that, a racing game that can either be played as an arcade title or as a serious driving sim. One of 2023's racing games might be that title to bring racing game fans together, the sequel to 2020's Hot Wheels Unleashed. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged is the upcoming arcade racer using Mattel's famous toy car license from developer Milestone. This company knows its racing games, given that it created and developed the MotoGP series and the Ride series, a slew of motorcycle simulation games that are very, very tough to play. In contrast, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 is as arcadey a racing game as you would expect. But you still need some skill to get through the courses and enemy AI, as well as against online players. See, you now have a jump and straight button. This means you can bob and sideswipe, as well as jump to other lanes and tracks, whenever the driving situation calls for it. Speaking of which, your eyes aren't deceiving you. All the tracks here take place in some person's backyard and some kid's bedroom. You are racing using toy cars, after all. So don't act too shocked if you see a giant obstacle course and barrier featuring toy T-Rexes. You have a ton of modes to play with: single race, time trial, drift, elimination, and checkpoint mode. Elimination is our favorite among the modes so far. All players keep racing on a course, with the last player being eliminated after 15 seconds or so have passed. The clock will always be counting down repeatedly to kill off players at the bottom. So you need to be at pole position to win the elimination mode. It's less a race and more an endurance contest, as you can still hang around in the middle position and then catch up later. These 5 new game modes will have strong focus on online, so expect to play these frequently when playing competitively against others. Not only that, but the game will feature a nifty story mode and over 130 vehicles to collect, including the newly added ATV vehicle class. You'll be doing a lot of off-road driving in this new racing game, so it's nice that the devs taking that into consideration. Hot Wheels Unleashed will be out on 19 October for PC and consoles like the Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. Unless you prefer something a lot more serious and heavily on the driving sim aspect, you should at least give this Hot Wheels tie-in some consideration.
Wow, Hot Wheels. I'm actually excited because that's a name I haven't heard of in a long time. I know there's a huge fan and collectors of Hot Wheels, but Luis, how about you? How familiar are you with Hot Wheels?
Well, I too grew up loving and collecting Hot Wheels. Matter of fact, most of the toys that I owned were by Mattel, the company behind Hot Wheels. But over the years, Mattel has come quite a long way from when I was just a kid. They've since embraced diversity and inclusion by creating cars that represent a wide range of cultures and backgrounds. This approach allows children from different walks of life to find cars that resonate with them, making the toy line a lot more inclusive as a whole. And Mattel has demonstrated their commitment to environmental responsibility by producing eco-friendly toys, and including some made out of recycled materials. This focus on sustainability aligns with the growing social consciousness around environmental issues, which just goes to show how in tune they are with the modern age. But Aoife, how about you? Do you have any favorite cars in the toy line?
Well, call me old-fashioned because I do love the pink-red loading Volkswagen Beach Bomb, the cheetah-based Python, which just looks like a new age hot rod with the engine sticking out, and the Mad Maverick, But Luis, that's about me, but I do have one more question for you. The previous segment, we talked about racing games that bridge skills gaps. Perhaps you'd like to suggest a couple more games, that from your end that do just about that.
I mean, how could I forget the Mario Kart series? Mario Kart 8 for the Nintendo Switch is definitely Nintendo's most fundamentally Mario Kart game to date. So if you're looking for a game to get into, maybe give Mario Kart 8 a try. However, my personal favorite renditions are Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube. The Wii version came with a shell for the controller, which is in the shape of a steering wheel, which can help simulate the kart experience. The GameCube version, however, was a bit different, as it was a lot more arcade-like, and you ride with 2 characters per car, and each character has its own car with its own special items and abilities.
Maybe I'll think about that, getting Mario Kart for the Switch. Sounds like the perfect getaway game into the franchise. But I think that's it for this week's Asphalt Field episode. We hope you enjoyed getting a glimpse into this extremely passionate genre of gaming. I'm your host, Aoife.
And I'm Lewis.
And thank you so much for tuning in. May you always have enough nitro boost to blaze onwards to success. Bye-bye.